Your little boy comes home from kindergarten one day and tells you that he's having trouble with his gender identity. Apparently they had a discussion about gender today in class, and now your little boy feels like a little girl, which is strange considering a week ago he told you he wanted to be a Power Ranger. You're taken aback by this, so you take him to a medical practitioner. This medical practitioner diagnoses your child with something called gender dysphoria, a feeling of being disconnected from your biological sex. But he assures you not to worry. There's medical treatment for things like this. In fact, he advocates for a process known as medical transitioning, where your kid will be given chemicals to block puberty, hormone replacement therapy, and eventually sex reassignment surgery. So you go home and start doing some research. On the internet, you find thousands of transgender identifying individuals who tell you that medical transition is the way to go. And the consensus is that the younger you start, the better it will be. 4 years ago, if you had asked me what to do with your 5-year-old child, I would have told you to affirm them. I would have told you that children know who they are, they know how they feel, and it's your duty as a parent to follow that feeling. I even would have told you that going through the process of medical transitioning would have made your child happy and in fact save their lives. I would have gone as far as to say that if you deprive them of medical treatment, you would be doing something that is inhumane and that your child should even be taken away from you in this case. But upon doing some diligent research, I actually found the opposite, that allowing a child to go through medical transitioning is inherently harmful. Harmful in more ways than anybody is willing to admit, but we're here to talk about that now. Here's why you should not allow children to transition their gender. 42% of Americans say they know somebody who identifies as transgender. A study out of the University of Pittsburgh found that 9.2% of young people feel some sort of deviation between the sex that they were born with and their gender identity. This is a growing phenomenon among young people in America that's being reinforced by social media, mainstream media, and even our schools that are teaching children that gender isn't binary and they themselves may be born in the wrong body. I would learn this years later upon looking into the research done by a psychologist known by the name of Ken Zucker. Ken Zucker was one of the most widely published experts in North America on gender dysphoria and transgenderism. His approach to treating gender dysphoria was to teach children that there were different ways to be a boy and different ways to be a girl. And in his research, he found that 70% of kids eventually outgrow their gender dysphoria. And before we go accusing Ken Zucker of being some sort of bigot or transphobe, it is important to note that he did have 60 cases in which he referred a minor to medically transition. Of course, these were extreme cases of gender dysphoria and represent outliers upon the thousands and thousands of patients that he saw throughout his career. But it's unlikely that you will hear anything from psychologist Ken Zucker today. Why? Because he's been canceled by the medical community for not going along with the gender affirmation ideology that they've been trying to push. And it's not just people like me and Ken Zucker who are getting censored on this stuff. The American Academy of Pediatrics told more than 100 clinicians and researchers that they were not allowed to attend their national conference because they deviated from the reigning orthodoxy that is blind affirmation gender theory. Target refused to sell Abigail Schreier's book Irreversible Damage that put a microscope to this issue. And what's even more insane is that as this ideology is adopted by our courts of law, we have parents that are getting their children removed from them if they disagree with medical transition. This is seen in the stories of Ted Hidako and Jeffrey Younger, two men who have lost custody of their children in this battle against allowing them to go through medical transition. Stories of detransitioners are being suppressed, with organizations like GLAAD, one of the leading LGBTQIA+ organizations in America, saying that we should not highlight the stories of detransitioners because they paint a false picture of what it means to be transgender. That's their tactic. Lie, censor, and stomp out dissent, and you get to bear the burden of the issues that they've created. Meanwhile, other countries are making actual headway when it comes to research pertaining these issues. The UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence found that hormone therapy for pediatric patients had very unclear benefits. The Karolinska Hospital of Sweden, an institution known for giving out the Nobel Prize in medicine, has decided to end its use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for all patients under the age of 18. Finland's national gender program found that treating pediatric patients with hormone therapy caused no significant improvement in mental health. France's National Academy of Medicine recognizes the issue of social media as it pertains to gender identity, saying that parents should be diligent in looking at what their children are seeing on social media, as it could influence their gender identity and make them feel an incongruence with their biological sex. They also recommend that children experiencing gender dysphoria undergo psychological evaluation for as long as is possible before before even considering medical transitioning. These are not the only countries identifying these problems and coming to this conclusion, but when they do, all roads point against medical transition and blind affirmation of your child's gender identity. Now, it's very clear that gender confusion is devastating, and it's something that I would not wish on my worst enemy. And as much as I can sit here and look at numbers and studies and speculate, I will never know what it's like to feel a true disconnect between my mind and my body. But we can't ignore the horrible impact that this sort of ideology is having on children. First, we have a huge issue, and that's sterilization. Putting your child on puberty blockers or hormone therapy puts them at extremely high risk of infertility. And of course, if you go down the route of sex reassignment surgery, your kid has been sterilized. Next, we have the issue of depression and suicide, which is often coupled with gender dysphoria. One of the longest studies done on transgenderism came out of Sweden. This study found that even after sex reassignment surgery, transgender individuals had a strikingly high morbidity rate from suicide. The professionals who carried out this study recommended patients still require extensive psychiatric care for the rest of their lives. Under the Obama administration in 2016, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid found that there was no significant improvement in mental health after receiving sex reassignment surgery. Yet transgender advocates and allies on the internet will tell you the exact opposite. It makes life so much better. Where are the facts to support that? These same people say that gender is a, quote, social construct. Well, so is race and age and time, but we don't see people running around trying to change those realities and expecting others to affirm it. And all for an ideology that doesn't really make much sense. The same people who are telling you that gender roles don't exist and that boys can love pink and girls can love blue look at a little 5-year-old who suddenly likes dolls and dresses and tells him that he could be a girl. If gender roles don't exist, then how can a boy that exhibits, quote, feminine traits somehow be a girl? One of these two things has to give way. If we're advocating that children be able to medically transition, we should prove that it makes them happier, healthier, safer. All the evidence that I've found shows the opposite. Yet this harmful narrative still persists. Why is this happening? Well, it's being taught. We have teachers' unions that are adopting gender theory into their curriculum, students in California building gender-bred men in class and being told that gender confusion is normal, kids in Kentucky that are going to sexy summer camp and being taught that gender is fluid and non-binary and you can choose whatever it is that you want to be. Woke corporations like Disney coming out in support of gender theory, even staging protests in regard to it. ESPN taking moments of silence for the LGBTQIA+ community. And don't even get me started on TikTok, a social media platform that is most popular among vulnerable, impressionable young people. On that platform, you have teachers that have transition closets in their classrooms where you can come to school in your normal clothes and change into whatever it is that you would like to be. Influencers who tell you that they knew their gender identity from the moment that they were born and that people should just simply affirm it. The truth is, these children are being exploited. They are vulnerable, they're alone, they're confused, and suddenly they meet this community of people online who are telling them that everything is going to be fine, and if you deviate from that narrative, you are censored and silenced. In fact, I'll be amazed if this video even stays on YouTube. All that being said, the studies, the rates of suicide and mental illness, the influence of social media, the different countries who are taking different routes, these stories of detransitioners, can we really in good conscience and good faith say that blind affirmation of gender identity and medical transitioning for children is the compassionate route to take here? The facts, the evidence, and the stories support the route of exercising caution when it comes to gender identity, particularly as it pertains to children. And if your child makes it to adulthood and wants to go through the process of sex reassignment, that is their right. But we owe it to them to let them grow up and make that decision as an informed adult. We're all gonna have a decision to make as to whether or not we accept this new normal. Clearly, I've made my decision. I've given you my perspective. I've told you the facts. I've told you the stories. I've told you what I believe you need to hear. And now it's time for you to make your decision.